The Lowe's Angel skyline was a shimmering grid of gold and neon, but from the 20th floor of the Jung Holdings building, it looked like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. It had been 6 months since my promotion. At 24, I was finally making enough to support my mother and my little brother, Jason, in our small apartment in the hills. My long, black curls were pulled back into a sleek, professional bun, but I still felt the weight of being the only person in the room who didn't come from money. The air in the office changed at 10 a.m. It grew cold, pressurized. The memo had been cryptic: all hands to reception. The CEO has ARRIVED. I stood near the front, smoothing my blazer over my curves. Then the private elevator chimed. Mino Jung walked out like he owned the molecules in the air. He was 29, a vision of sharp Korean tailoring and lethal grace. He was flanked by 3 men who looked less like bodyguards and more like professional executioners. Mino didn't acknowledge the vice president's bowing to him. His obsidian eyes swept the room once, twice, and then they locked onto me. The world fell away. The sound of the AC, the murmurs of my colleagues, everything went silent. He stopped right in front of me, his height intimidating, his scent a mix of sandalwood and something metallic. "Name?" he demanded. His voice was a deep, resonant growl that made my toes curl in my heels. "Loveth Townsend, sir," I said, meeting his gaze even though my heart was trying to kick its way out of my chest. He didn't move. He stared at me with a terrifying, singular focus. "Loveth," he murmured, the name sounding like a prayer and a threat all at once. "From today, you report directly to me. Come." The CEO's private office was a glass cage overlooking the 405 freeway. Mino Jung sat behind a desk made of obsidian, watching me. He hadn't looked at a single file since we entered. He was only looking at me. "The Volkov merger," he said, sliding a heavy folder across the desk. "Our analysts say it's impossible to verify their Brazilian assets before the fiscal deadline on Monday. I want you to verify them. All of them." I looked at the stack of documents. This wasn't an assignment, it was a setup. "Sir, I'm an investment analyst. To audit international assets in 48 hours. It's beyond my level. It's beyond anyone's level." Mino leaned forward, resting his chin on his interlaced fingers. A heavy gold ring with a strange crest caught the light. "I don't care about levels, Loveth. I care about results. If you succeed, you stay on this floor. If you fail, you're out." "And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Mino stood up, walking around the desk with the slow, deliberate pace of a wolf. He stopped inches from me, his presence suffocating. He reached out, his fingers grazing a loose curl that had escaped my bun. I should have pulled away, but I was frozen. "You won't refuse," he whispered, his eyes dark with a hunger that had nothing to do with business. "Because you like the challenge, and because you've caught my eye, Loveth Townsend. That is a very dangerous place to be." I took the folder and ran. I spent the next 2 days in a fever dream of data, fueled by the need to prove him wrong. I worked until my eyes bled, ignoring the calls from my boyfriend, Matthew. By Sunday night, I found the hidden ledger. I had done it. But as I looked at the security camera in the corner of my office, I realized Mino hadn't been testing my skills. He had been watching me, all night, every hour, waiting for me to belong to him. I stumbled into my apartment at dawn on Monday, my body aching from 48 hours of mental warfare. My mother was already in the kitchen, making breakfast for Jason. She looked at my exhausted face and sighed, pulling me into a hug. "You're working too hard, Loveth," she whispered. "This new boss, he's pushing you too far." "I have to do this, Mom. For us," I replied, though a part of me knew it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the way Mino Jung looked at me, like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. I went to my bedroom to change, but Matthew was there, sprawled across my bed. He looked up from his phone, a guilty flicker crossing his face before he masked it with a smile. "Long night at the office again. You're never home, Loveth. I just saved a multi-billion-dollar merger, Matt, I said, dropping my bag. I reached out to touch his shoulder, wanting comfort, but he pulled away slightly. That's great, he said flatly, but I'm heading out, guys' night. He left without a kiss. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling a strange chill. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was an unknown number. I opened the message and my heart stopped. It was a high-resolution photo of me, taken through my office window at 3 a.m. last night. I was leaning back, my eyes closed, a single hand resting on my throat. The text below it read, "You look exquisite when you're tired. See you at 9, Loveth." Mino, he hadn't just been watching the security feed. He had been outside, in the dark, watching me. I walked into Mino's office at exactly 9 a.m. He was standing by the window, the morning LA sun silhouetting his broad shoulders. He didn't turn around when I entered. "The Brazilian assets are verified," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I placed the final report on his desk. The discrepancy was in the offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands, not Brazil. It's all there. Mino turned slowly. He didn't look at the report. He walked toward me, his eyes fixed on mine. "I knew you would find it. Most people look where they are told. You look where the truth is hidden." He stopped so close I could feel the heat radiating from his suit. He reached out, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "You didn't sleep. I can see the exhaustion in your eyes." "I did my job, Mr. Jung. Is there anything else?" I tried to step back, but his hand moved to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my curls. It wasn't a gentle hold. It was a claim. "You call me Mino when we are alone," he commanded. "I have a boyfriend," I blurted out, the words a pathetic shield. Mino's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened until they were pits of ink. "A boyfriend," he echoed, his voice dropping to a dangerous, silk-smooth register. "Matthew, the man who spends his guys' nights at the Roosevelt Hotel with a woman who isn't you." My blood turned to ice. "You're lying." "I never lie about what belongs to me, Loveth. And whether you know it yet or not, you are mine." Mino let me go and slid a thin manila envelope across the desk. "Go ahead, open it. See the loyalty of the man you're protecting." With trembling hands, I opened the file. There were photos. Matthew at a bar, his hand on a blonde woman's thigh. Matthew entering a hotel room. Time-stamped logs of his texts to her, texts filled with the same sweet words he used to say to me. The betrayal was surgical. It cut through my heart with terrifying precision. "Why are you doing this?" I choked out, tears blurring my vision. "Why do you care who I'm with?" Mino walked back to his chair and sat down, looking every bit the mafia prince I suspected he was. "Because he is a distraction. He wastes your time. He drains your energy. I want your focus entirely on me, Loveth. I want your brilliance, your fire, and your body. I don't share." "You're a monster," I whispered. "I am a man who gets what he wants," he replied coldly. "And I want you. Now take the rest of the day, go home, end it with him. If he gives you any trouble, tell me. I'll ensure he is handled." The way he said handled made my skin crawl. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was something much darker. The confrontation with Matthew was loud and ugly. When I threw the photos on the table, his face went from shock to anger. "Who gave you these? Were you spying on me?" he yelled, packing our small living room. "It doesn't matter who gave them to me. You're cheating on me, Matthew, while I'm out there working myself to death for our future." "Our future?" he laughed bitterly. "You're never here, Loveth. You're always at that tower with that billionaire. Everyone's talking about how he looks at you. You're probably his little plaything already." The slap echoed through the apartment before I even realized I'd moved. Matthew grabbed my wrist, his eyes turning mean. "You think you're better than me now, because you moved to the 20th floor." Suddenly, the front door kicked open. Two of the men I'd seen with Mino, the men in black suits, stepped inside. They didn't say a word. They just looked at Matthew's hand on my wrist. "Let her go," one said, his voice like a mechanical saw. Matthew turned pale, dropping my arm instantly. "Who the hell are you guys?" "We're the people who will bury you if you touch her again," the man replied. They looked at me. "Mr. Jung is waiting in the car, Miss Townsend. He thought you might need assistance with your transition." I didn't go to the car. I walked past the bodyguards, down the stairs, and straight to the black SUV idling at the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Mino's calm, handsome face. "I'm resigning," I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "I'm done. I don't care about the promotion. I don't care about the money. You're stalking me, you're interfering in my life, and you sent goons into my home." Mino opened the door and stepped out. He was a head taller than me, a pillar of dark power on the sidewalk. People passed by, oblivious to the drama unfolding. "You aren't going anywhere," he said, his tone disturbingly conversational. "Watch me, I'll file a police report. I'll go to the press." Mino laughed, a short, dark sound. He stepped into my personal space, forcing me back against the car. He leaned down, his breath warm against my ear. "Do you know what Jung Holdings actually does, Loveth? We don't just invest in companies. We invest in people. We own the docks. We own the shipping lanes. We own the judges in this city." He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. "You can resign from the firm, but you cannot resign from me. I've already paid off your mother's medical debts. I've already enrolled Jason in the best private academy in the state. You leave and all of that disappears, along with Matthew." "You're blackmailing me," I breathed, the reality of my situation sinking in. "I'm protecting my investment," Mino corrected, his hand sliding into my hair, gripping it just tight enough to force me to look up at him. "I saw you in that lobby and I knew. You have a darkness in you, Loveth, a hunger for power that matches mine. You just need someone to give you permission to use it." I looked at him, at the beautiful, dangerous man who had systematically dismantled my life in less than a week. I should have hated him. I did hate him. But beneath the fear there was a sickening spark of adrenaline. He saw me. Not the good girl, not the hard worker, but the woman who wanted to rule. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice a broken whisper. Mino leaned in, his lips hovering just a fraction of an inch from mine. "Everything. I want your mind in the office and your body in my bed. I want you to be the queen of an empire people are afraid to name." He opened the car door wider. "Get in, Loveth, let's go home." As I stepped into the leather-scented darkness of his car, I knew I wasn't just going to a new house. I was entering a world where the laws of Lowe's angels didn't apply. I was entering Mino Jung's world, and there was no way out. The car didn't head back to the hills. Instead, we wound up the steep, curving roads of Bel Air until we reached a fortress of glass and steel perched on a cliffside. This was Mino's sanctuary, a cold, minimalist palace that felt more like a lookout tower than a home. "My things," I said, my voice echoing in the vast marble foyer. "My mother, Jason." "Already moved," Mino said, tossing his keys onto a side table. "They are in the guest wing, secure, safe from people like Matthew." He walked toward me, shedding his suit jacket. Underneath, his black dress shirt strained against the muscles of his back. He looked less like a CEO and more like a soldier. I realized then that the investment company was just the polished surface of a very deep, very dark ocean. "I didn't agree to live here," I snapped, though the luxury was suffocatingly beautiful. "You agreed the moment you stepped into my car," he replied, turning to face me. He didn't move closer, yet I felt cornered. "In this house you have everything, but you do not leave without my permission. You do not speak to anyone I haven't vetted. This is for your protection, Loveth." "Protection from what?" "From the people who want to hurt me by taking what is mine." He stepped forward then, his hand catching my chin. "And make no mistake, you are the most precious thing I own." The next morning, I wasn't sent to the 20th floor. A sleek black car drove me to a warehouse district near the port of Lowe's Angels. Mino was already there, surrounded by his men. The air smelled of salt and industrial oil. "Watch," Mino commanded, pulling me to a balcony overlooking the warehouse floor. Below, crates marked with the Jung Holdings logo were being opened. They weren't filled with tech or textiles. They were filled with specialized hardware, advanced surveillance equipment, and heavy weaponry. "We are the backbone of this city's shadow," Mino whispered behind me, his chest pressing against my back. "The banks move the money, but we move the power. I need you to manage the logistics of these shipments, Loveth. You have the mind for it. You see the patterns others miss." I looked down at the illegal arsenal and then back at him. "You're a gun runner, a mob boss. I am a businessman who understands that laws are for people without the means to break them," he said, his arms circling my waist. "You're not an analyst anymore. You're my consigliere, my eyes. Do this for me, and I will give you more power than any woman in this country has ever touched." The sheer scale of his operation was terrifying, but as I looked at the logistics manifests, my brain began to work. I saw the inefficiencies. I saw the risks. Against my will, the challenge ignited something inside me. A week into my new job, the reality of Mino's world turned violent. We were in his office when the windows suddenly shattered. Mino moved faster than I could scream, tackling me to the floor as a hail of gunfire shredded the mahogany desk. His body was a shield of solid muscle over mine. He didn't look scared. He looked livid. "Stay down," he roared. His men, the suits, returned fire with clinical precision. Within minutes, the silence returned, punctuated only by the sound of glass crunching under boots. Mino stood up, pulling a silver handgun from a holster I hadn't noticed. He helped me up, his hands checking me for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Who was that?" I gasped, my heart hammering. "The Volkovs," he said, his jaw tight. "They didn't appreciate you finding their laundering scheme. They lost a lot of money because of you, Loveth." The weight of it hit me. I wasn't just his obsession. I was a target. My brilliance had put blood on my hands. Mino saw the realization in my eyes and pulled me into his arms, crushing me against his heart. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I will burn their world to the ground for touching this building while you were in it." That evening, Mino took me to a jeweler in Beverly Hills. The store was closed to the public, the owner bowing low as we entered. "Something for the Queen," Mino said. He picked out a necklace, a teardrop diamond the size of a marble, suspended on a chain of white gold. When he fastened it around my neck, the weight felt like a collar. "I don't want jewelry, Mino. I want to go for a walk. I want to see my friends." "You have no friends, Loveth. Only people who want something from you," he said, his eyes reflecting the cold fire of the diamond. "Matthew was the first lesson. Don't make me give you a second." He led me to a mirror. I looked like a stranger. My long curls were pinned back with diamond clips, and the dress I wore cost more than my mother made in a year. I looked powerful. I looked expensive. "You look like you belong at my side," he murmured, his hands sliding down to my hips. "Tonight, the heads of the 5 families meet. You will be there. You will show them that the Jung Empire has found its heart." I realized then that the obsession wasn't just about love. It was about assimilation. He was turning me into a creature of his world, one diamond at a time. The meeting took place in an underground vault beneath a high-end restaurant in Koreatown. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the scent of old money. 4 older men sat around a circular table, their eyes widening as Mino walked in with me on his arm. "A girl, Jung," one of them laughed. "You bring a mistress to a table of war." Mino didn't flinch. He sat down and pulled me onto his lap, a move that was both possessive and insulting to the men around the table. "This girl is the reason the Volkovs are currently bleeding out their European assets. This is Loveth Townsend. She has more brains than your entire boards of directors." He leaned back, his hand resting possessively on my thigh. "She has something to say about your shipping routes through San Pedro." I felt all eyes on me, predatory, skeptical eyes. I took a breath, remembering the manifests I had studied. I began to speak, detailing the flaws in their current routes and how my new system would triple their efficiency while cutting the paper trail. By the time I finished, the room was silent. The men weren't laughing anymore. They were looking at me with a mixture of fear and respect. I felt a rush of pure, intoxicating power. For the first time, I understood why Mino did what he did. When we returned to the mansion, the adrenaline was still humming in my veins. Mino led me to his master suite, the doors closing with a heavy thud. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice thick with pride. He began to unbutton his shirt, his eyes never leaving mine. "They were terrified of you." "I was terrified of myself," I whispered. "I liked it, Mino, the way they looked at me, the power." "I told you," he said, stepping into my space. "You have a darkness in you. It's why I couldn't let you stay on that 20th floor. You were meant for the throne, not a cubicle." He leaned in to kiss me, but I put a hand on his chest. "If I do this, if I stay, what happens to my family? What happens to Jason?" Mino's expression turned solemn. He took my hand and kissed my knuckles. "They will live like royalty. Jason will never want for anything. But they are also my collateral, Loveth. As long as you are loyal to me, they are safe. If you ever betray me—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The obsession had reached its peak. He loved me, he wanted me, and he would destroy everything I held dear to keep me by his side. "Stay with me tonight," he commanded. "Not as an employee, as mine." As he pulled me toward the bed, the LA lights shimmering outside the window, I knew the Loveth Townsend who walked into that reception 20th floor was dead. In her place was something new, something dangerous, something that belonged entirely to Mino Jung. The peace of the mansion was a lie. 3 days after the meeting of the families, the world exploded. I was in the kitchen, helping Jason with his homework, trying to pretend our life was normal, when the alarms began to wail. It was a sound that tore through the soul, a jagged, high-pitched scream of electronic panic. "Jason, get under the table now," I screamed. Before he could move, the floor-to-ceiling windows of the dining room shattered inward. Black-clad figures swarmed through the glass like hornets. These weren't Mino's men. They wore the crest of the Volkov family. I grabbed a heavy kitchen knife, my heart roaring in my ears. I wasn't the analyst anymore, I was a cornered animal. A man lunged for Jason and I didn't think. I swung. The blade caught his arm and he hissed, backhanding me across the face. The world went gray. "Loveth," Jason shrieked. Just as the man reached for me again, his head snapped back, a crimson hole appearing in his forehead. Mino stood in the doorway, his face a mask of demonic rage. He held a custom black handgun in each hand, spitting fire until the room was littered with the bodies of the invaders. He dropped the guns and ran to me, sliding on the bloody marble to pull me into his lap. "Loveth, look at me, look at me." I coughed, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. "Jason, is he?" "He's safe. My men have him," Mino whispered, his hands trembling as he wiped blood from my cheek. His eyes weren't obsidian anymore, they were liquid fire. "They touched you. They entered my home and they touched you." The mansion was transformed into a fortress. Within hours, 50 more men had arrived, patrolling the perimeter with assault rifles. Mino didn't let me out of his sight. He moved his entire operation into the master suite. "They want a war. I'll give them an apocalypse," Mino growled into his phone. I sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a silk robe, watching him. He was packing, barking orders in Korean and English, moving pieces on a digital map of Lowe's angels like a grandmaster. "Mino," I said softly. He stopped and looked at me, his expression softening only for a fraction of a second. "Go back to sleep, Loveth." "I can help. You're looking for their main distribution hub, aren't you? You think it's at the docks." I stood up and walked over to the screens. "You're wrong. Look at the transit times of the trucks they use today. They didn't come from the port, they came from the valley. I pointed to a cluster of warehouses near Van Nuys. They're using the private airfield. It's faster and they've bribed the local precinct. If you hit the docks, you're hitting a ghost. Mino stared at the map, then at me. A slow, dark smile spread across his face. He walked over and gripped the back of my neck, pulling my forehead to his. My beautiful, lethal genius, what would I do without you? I'm going with you, I said as Mino prepared his tactical vest. No, he said flatly, it's too dangerous. They tried to kill my brother, Mino. They hit me in my own home. My voice cracked with a fury I didn't know I possessed. You said I had a darkness in me. You said I was meant for the throne. Well, a queen doesn't hide in the bedroom while her enemies are hunted. Mino paused, his hand hovering over a spare magazine. He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw the fire in my eyes, the cold resolve that had replaced the fear. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, sleek pistol. It was pearl-handled and light. Do you know how to use this? Show me, I replied. He stood behind me, his chest a warm wall against my back, his large hands guiding mine as I felt the weight of the weapon. Squeeze, don't jerk, only point it at what you intend to destroy. I intend to destroy the men who made my brother cry, I whispered. Mino kissed the top of my head. Then let's go. Tonight, Los Angeles learns who really owns the night. The night air was cold as we approached the warehouse. We moved like shadows, a fleet of black SUVs with their lights extinguished. Mino led the breach, a whirlwind of violence that was terrifyingly efficient. I stayed behind the primary line of his guards, my heart hammering a rhythm of pure adrenaline. The sound of gunfire was deafening, the flashes of light illuminating the chaos. We pushed into the central office of the warehouse. There, cowering behind a desk, was Viktor Volkov, the man who had ordered the hit on the mansion. Mino didn't shoot him. He kicked the desk aside and dragged Viktor out by his hair, throwing him at my feet. He's the one, Mino said, his voice cold as the grave. He sent the men into your kitchen, Loveth. He decided your life was a fair price for his lost profits. Viktor looked up at me, his face bruised and bloody. Please, it was just business. Jung, tell her. Mino stepped back, crossing his arms. He wasn't looking at Viktor. He was watching me, waiting to see if I would cross the line he had drawn for me. The pistol felt heavy in my hand. The smell of gunpowder and sweat filled the room. I looked at Viktor, and I didn't see a businessman. I saw the man who had endangered my mother. I saw the man who had tried to take away the only safety I had left. It wasn't just business, I said, my voice sounding strange even to me. It was personal. I thought about my life 6 months ago. The 20th floor, the spreadsheets, the cheating boyfriend. It all felt like a dream, a pale, boring dream. This was reality. The power, the cold steel, the man standing behind me who would burn the world for me. I raised the gun. Loveth, Mino whispered, his voice full of a dark, twisted pride. I didn't hesitate, I pulled the trigger. The sound was a finality. Viktor slumped to the floor. I stood there, the gun still raised, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I expected to feel guilt. I expected to feel horror. Instead, I felt free. We walked out of the burning warehouse as the sun began to peek over the LA horizon. The sky was a bruised purple and orange. Mino wrapped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me into his side. Are you okay? He asked. I'm different, I said, looking at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. You're home, he corrected. When we returned to the mansion, the staff and guards stood in a line, bowing as we passed. They didn't just bow to Mino anymore. They bowed to me. Mino led me to the balcony overlooking the city. He stood behind me, his arms locking around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. The Volkovs are finished, he murmured. The other families have already sent their tributes. They know now. You are not my mistress, you are not my employee. He turned me around, his eyes burning with a terrifying, absolute obsession. You are the soul of the Jung Syndicate, my queen, my equal. He kissed me then, a kiss that tasted of salt, smoke, and victory. I knew then that I could never go back to the world of 9 to 5s and ordinary lives. I was bound to this man by blood and diamond. I was his obsession, and he was mine. Tell me you're mine, Loveth, he demanded against my lips. I am yours, Mino, I whispered, finally embracing the darkness, and you are mine. The victory over the Volkovs was only the beginning. With the seat of power now shared between us, Mino shifted from defense to a total takeover of the Los Angeles underworld. But first, he had to clear the board of any lingering threats, including the ones from my past. I found him, Mino said one evening, dropping a surveillance photo onto the mahogany dinner table. It was Matthew. He looked haggard, ducking into a dive bar in San Pedro. He had been trying to sell information about my promotion to a rival tabloid. He was desperate and dangerous. What do you want to do with him? Mino asked, his eyes tracking my every reaction. This was another test. He wanted to see if any shred of the old Loveth remained. I looked at the photo of the man I once thought I loved. He seemed like a ghost from a different life. He's a loose end, Mino, and you taught me that loose ends get people killed. Mino's smile was razor-sharp. He snapped his fingers and two men emerged from the shadows. You heard the Queen. Scrub him from the record. As they left, I didn't feel a flicker of regret. Matthew had been a parasite, Mino was a predator, and I had finally realized which one I preferred to be. By the second month of our joint rule, the 20th floor of Jung Holdings had been completely redesigned. It was no longer a hub for analysts. It was the nerve center of a shadow government. I sat at a desk mirrored to Mino's, managing the digital flow of investments that kept the city's docks, unions, and politicians in our pocket. The mayor is hesitating on the new port expansion, I noted, tapping a pen against my chin. Mino walked over, leaning over my shoulder to look at the screen. He needs a reminder of who funded his campaign. No, I disagreed, turning in my chair to face him. A reminder is a threat. Threats invite rebellion. We need to give him a stake in the success. If we move his brother's construction firm into the lead for the subcontract, he won't just agree, he'll fight for us. Mino stared at me, a look of pure, unadulterated worship in his eyes. He dropped to his knees between my legs, resting his hands on my chair's armrests. You're more ruthless than I am, Loveth. I would have just broken his legs. You're breaking his will. I learned from the best, I whispered, running my fingers through his dark hair. One night, while Mino was away at a late-night shipment arrival, I found myself in the basement archives of the mansion. I wasn't looking for anything in particular until I found a locked drawer in a desk that hadn't been touched in years. Using the skills Mino had taught me, I picked the lock. Inside was a file on my own family. My breath hitched as I read. It wasn't just medical bills and school tuition. Mino had been tracking me for 3 years, long before my promotion to the 20th floor. He had orchestrated the opening at the firm. He had even subtly influenced the downfall of the company Matthew used to work for to ensure we stayed financially strained. He hadn't just found me. He had cultivated me like a rare orchid in a greenhouse. The door to the archive creaked open. Mino stood there, silhouetted by the dim hallway light. He didn't look angry that I'd found the file. He looked expectant. You've been planning this since I was 21, I said, my voice echoing. I saw you at a charity gala your college hosted, he said, stepping into the room. You were serving drinks to men who weren't fit to shine your shoes. I saw the way you looked at them, with a hunger for everything they had. I decided then that I would be the one to give it to you. I should have been terrified. I should have run. But as he stood before me, confessing to years of manipulation, all I felt was a terrifying sense of belonging. He had seen my potential before I had even realized I had a heart of stone. "You trapped me," I said, stepping closer to him. "I built a world for you," he corrected, his voice a low, desperate plea. "Everything I have done was to bring you here to my side. Without you, this empire is just a pile of cold ash. With you, it's a legacy." He pulled a small ceremonial dagger from his belt, a relic of his family's lineage. He nicked his palm and held it out to me. "No more secrets, Loveth. No more tests. Blood for blood. If you want to leave, kill me now. If you stay, you are the Jung Syndicate forever." I took the blade, pressing it into my own palm until the red rose to the surface. I pressed my hand against his, our blood mingling and staining our sleeves. "I'm not going anywhere, Mino. We have a city to finish burning." 6 months after the night we met at reception, the world looked very different. I stood on the balcony of the Jung Holdings penthouse, my long, black, curly hair blowing in the Santa Ana winds. I wore a gown of deep crimson and the diamond collar Mino had given me. Below us, the lights of Lowe's angels flickered like a million subservient stars. Mino stepped out behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his head against mine, watching the city he had conquered for me. "Are you happy, my queen?" he murmured. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't see the girl who was worried about rent or her boyfriend's loyalty. I saw a woman whose name made the powerful tremble. I saw a woman who had found a love so dark and so absolute that it had rewritten the laws of her soul. "I'm more than happy, Mino," I said, turning in his arms to kiss him. "I'm powerful." As the sun began to set over the Pacific, casting long, bloody shadows across the city, the two of us stood together, the CEO and his analyst, the king and his queen. The obsession was complete. The cage was closed, and for the first time in my life I didn't want to be anywhere else.